Hi, you're very welcome back to this series on identity issues. If you're from my generation, you'd be well used to watching Marx Brothers films with your parents and your grandparents. And there's a very well-known quote by Groucho Marx. He said, "I refuse to join any club that would have me as a member." And even though that's a fun, witty thing to say, it's actually a brilliant description of the subject I want to go into today, which is self-sabotage. What is self-sabotage? It is disqualifying yourself from something before anyone else has a chance to do it. It's putting an obstacle in your own way to hinder the hopes, the dreams, the goals, the aspirations, the vision that you have, those roadblocks that will stop you from attaining what's always been in your heart. I want to talk about somebody who had something in his heart, and that's Moses. And you'll read his story in the book of Exodus. Moses wasn't brought up with his people, the Hebrew people. He was brought up in Pharaoh's palace in the land of Egypt. But he knew deep within himself that he had a call and an ability to rescue God's people from slavery. That desire had risen up, and he tried to do it inappropriately and at the wrong time, in the wrong season, and it backfired. It says in the book of Acts, chapter 7, Moses thought that his own people would realize that God was using him to rescue them, but they did not. And Moses ended up fleeing to a desert, where he stayed for 40 years. But then one day, beside a burning bush, he encounters God, and God speaks to him, and God calls him and says, "Moses, I want you to go and rescue my people from slavery. I want you to lead them out of Egypt into a land that I will give them, a land of milk and honey." And God makes incredible promises to Moses. He promises to be with him very powerfully. And he gives Moses a taste right then of the miraculous signs that he will use to accompany Moses' ministry, to show that God is with him. But for every powerful declaration that God brings, Moses has a doubt to express. Now there's no but in the text. Moses doesn't say, "But God," but I hear a but in almost everything that Moses says to God. But who am I to do this? But what will I say? Excuse me. But what if people don't listen? But I'm not good at speaking. Now, for somebody who wasn't good at speaking, he was making quite a good attempt to talk himself out of this task, this job that God had for him. And finally, when he realizes the magnitude of what God is asking of him, and how far he is going to be stretched out of his comfort zone, he says, "Lord, send someone else." Self-sabotaging, disqualifying himself. But even though God was angry, God didn't allow this attempt at self-sabotage to shipwreck the destiny not only of Moses, but of so many other people. And I'm very grateful that in my own efforts to self-sabotage, that hasn't been the end of the story, that God has forgiven me and enabled me to start fresh. I want to tell you a story about something that happened to illustrate how we can self-sabotage. I was a probationary minister quite a while ago, and my husband and I were pastoring a Christian community, and we were invited to a day retreat. So we drove to this day retreat and we walked in, and I had absolutely no idea what to expect, and I was a little bit nervous. And the first impression I got when I walked in was, oh my goodness, there are hardly any women here. In fact, there was only myself and 2 others, and there were about 30 men. And one of the other women was there as the administrator to take notes. So there were just basically 2 of us there attending the retreat. So right from the off, I felt quite uncomfortable, as if I wasn't sure that I belonged there. And when the first session started and a man got up to greet everybody, he said, "It's so wonderful to be here with all you wonderful men of God." And I just felt a bit invisible sitting there. And I really felt, oh, I'm not sure I belong. I'm really not sure that I did the right thing in coming here today. And so at lunchtime we went upstairs, and then I realised there were other women in the building, but they were there as volunteers to do the catering, to serve us lunch. And so we had lunch, and when lunch was over, people started to stand up and walk around and mingle and greet each other. And I noticed that many of the men were exchanging business cards. They were networking, seeing if they could maybe strategize or help each other or share resources, something we would be well used to being part of. But this day I just didn't feel I wanted to do anything like that because of my own discomfort. And I noticed that some of the ladies who were there working were starting to clear the tables. So what did I do? I got some dirty dishes and I started to help those women to clear away. I was self-sabotaging. It wasn't my servant heart that was kicking in. It was attempting to hide behind something, to hide behind a job to do, a task, a busyness that would just take away the discomfort of feeling on the outside, looking in, on the fringe, not being part of. And later when I reflected on this, I was kicking myself. I had some regrets about my attitude and my behaviour that day and what was going on. And as I reflected, I felt I had become like the older brother of the prodigal son in the story that Jesus told. That my Father, my Heavenly Father, had invited me, had given me a seat at a table. And instead of finding out my purpose there, enjoying my place there, instead I had chosen to stay in the fields with the labourers, feeling that's where I belonged. And so I had to ask myself after that, why did I do that? Why did I disqualify myself from belonging there? Why did I self-sabotage? And why did Moses do that as well? And I really feel I've discovered a key to this. I feel we self-sabotage because of the running commentary that goes on within our minds. And our running commentary is based largely on conclusions that we have formed about ourselves. And those conclusions have led us to disqualify ourselves in some way from blessing. Conclusions like, I don't belong, I don't fit in, I'm not able, I won't be taken seriously, I'm just not good enough. And it amazed me to see in Acts chapter 7, talking about Moses, that it says Moses was powerful in speech and action. Well, Moses certainly didn't sound like he was powerful in speech and action. He didn't sound like he believed that for even 1 minute. But perhaps he only became powerful in speech and action when he stopped trying to disqualify himself. So I have learned the hard way that I need to pay attention to that running commentary that's going on in my mind. And I have needed to challenge those conclusions that I have come to about myself, especially when they are opposed to everything that God has told me that I am and I can do. And God basically let Moses know, it's not about who you are, Moses, and it's not about who you're not. It's not about what you can do, Moses, or what you can't do. It's about who I am with you. And God has shown me the same thing. Doesn't really matter about my inadequacies or adequacies. It's about Him in me. And I feel I'm talking to some people today, and you might have regrets about the way that you have self-sabotaged in the past. But I have good news for you. You know, God has always offered me, and He offers you, a clean slate and a fresh page so that the story of your life can continue to be written. You know, God has so much for you. Jesus said, I am the way. He is the one who will lead you to the Father's table, to sit at that place that He's uniquely prepared for you. And He has a land of promise, your own land of milk and honey, that He wants to lead you into. So it's time to get out of your own way and to lean on God once and for all, and to trust Him, His ability, the fact that Christ is in you and He is all you need and far more. So God bless you.